With its growing wealth, the community has been getting more and more engaged in U.S. politics.
You had a community which really galvanized around the country on an issue which they had two things. They had nothing to gain personally, and they probably, if you were to really drill down, did not completely understand how and what the nuts and bolts of this is. If you were to ask them the difference between IEA and NSG, and this is not to knock the intelligence of these people, because these are physicians and scientists, etc., who are very intelligent.
And they really went all out on this, and somewhat effectively. They played hardball Washington-style politics. They let senators and congressmen know that unless they supported this bill, they could not, that the Indian American community would stop supporting them in elections. And I know, and I won't give any names, but there were some prominent people who were, who decided to change their views when hearing that important sources of financial support for their campaigns might dry up.
Several Indian American groups played a big role in mobilizing the community. They helped members understand the issue and coordinated their activities. Among those groups was Sanjay Puri's U.S.-India Political Action Committee, which has become one of the most visible Indian American lobbying groups in Washington. The Indian Americans flooded congressional offices with letters, emails, and faxes. Many met their elected representatives to argue for the deal in person.
Basically, I sent probably a total of 500 some emails through my own contacts. And with that email, I asked my friends, like exactly I did, they reach out to their friends. So it was like an email chain. And personally, I visited 5 congressmen and 3 senators.
The community's efforts did not go unnoticed in the Bush administration.
There's no question that the Indian American community made a difference too, because they were so vigorous in organizing to support this publicly, taking out ads in newspapers, speaking up in public fora, that it made quite a difference.
From the Indian side, another group that campaigned for the deal was the Confederation of Indian Industries. CII, which represents more than 7,000 businesses, has had a presence in the U.S. Capitol for more than a decade now. The Indian industry in general, and CII member companies in particular, see a huge economic potential in the deal, and they hope to benefit.
This is not something that is going to be done only by foreign companies. The domestic content has to be extremely high. So there are new business opportunities in volumes that are unthinkable. And they're going to create jobs. It means new technology.
In recent years, CII has spent considerable resources on reaching out to members of Congress. Its main focus has been taking members of Congress and their staffers to India. Even though the Indian industry and the government of India lobbied for the deal in Washington, it was the U.S. industry, along with the Indian Americans, that did the heavy lifting.
It was not something that you do out there, in your face scenario. This is something you have to do subtly, because you're wanting it for India, but U.S. businesses as spokespeople for what we want to convey is the best thing, because they were doing such a tremendous job.
The U.S. industry's lobbying campaign was led by the U.S.-India Business Council, a 30-year-old business association that represents 280 of the largest American companies investing in India. The US IBC is part of the most powerful business lobbying group in America, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's influence is also symbolized by its location. It sits directly across the White House. To lobby for the deal, the US IBC formed a front group, the Coalition for Partnership with India. It included Indian Americans, foreign policy experts, and US businesses.
You know who those industrialists are. It would be the General Electrics, it would be the Westinghouses, it would be the defense companies, it would be the computer companies, the companies that have been banking in India for the last 100 years, companies that had a true stake in deepening the commercial partnership with India. They saw this as the emblematic opportunity to deepen our commercial partnership with India.
It prepared a constellation of influence map, listing various officials in Congress and various departments that are crucial to the passage of the deal.
And we were quite disciplined about making certain that on a weekly basis we would convene as the Coalition for Partnership with India to coordinate our activities, but only given that we met once a week to coordinate our activities, it was every day that we were engaged in our advocacy activity, whether it was on the Hill, whether it was in the White House, whether it was at the State Department or at the Commerce Department.
Opponents of the deal say the lobbying by the other side was a big factor, and they didn't have the resources to mount such a comparable campaign.
Millions of dollars have been spent advocating for this deal. Indian taxpayers have paid high-priced Washington lobbyists quite a lot to push this. A lot of campaign donations have been engineered to U.S. members of Congress to try to win their support. And I'm sure all that's legal, but it's been a factor.
Kimball even accuses some advocates of the deal of profiting from it.
And in addition, there are a number of people who have worked in the Bush administration, who left the administration and started lobbying for the government of India. Robert Blackwell is a good example, who are profiting mightily from their advocacy for this deal.
After the deal became law, the view in Washington, especially within the non-proliferation community, was that India got too much.
Well, I think the facts are evident that the United States gave India a great deal, and that the Bush administration asked very little of India. And what it did ask, when India said no, the Bush administration retreated. So we don't have a signature by India on the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. We don't have any restraints on reprocessing or enrichment activities. We have open-ended help for India from the international community on nuclear fuel, which means that should a future coalition government of India decide to test again, the penalties are likely to be modest or short-lived.
All along, there have been places where the U.S. could have asked for more and didn't. There are other very specific things, such as giving India enrichment, uranium enrichment, or spent fuel reprocessing technology, consent to reprocessing. There are many, many details in the Nuclear Cooperation Agreement. When you do a careful analysis, it appears that Indian negotiators did a fabulous job, and the U.S. negotiators didn't do such a fabulous job.
Scosoni says a diplomat well-versed in non-proliferation issues should have negotiated the deal for the United States.
I think that really explains why many of the non-proliferation considerations were given short shrift, because the people negotiating the agreement didn't know, they didn't have the background, they weren't aware of some of the implications of what they were doing.
However, Burns, the chief U.S. negotiator, says the two countries ended up with an agreement that serves the interests of both.
The true test of diplomacy is when two great nations like ours come together. We have different perspectives. We come from different parts of the world. We have different histories and sometimes slightly different interests. And yet we're able to come together, find some common ground, work out through language, in this case the English language, some rather difficult compromises, and we both give something up so that we can produce something of value for each other.